I've been a financial advisor for over 20 years. And in today's video, we're going to count down the top 5 things that people tell me that they wish they knew before they retired. So starting with number 5, and that is that it's hard to go from a savings mentality to a spending mentality. And I think all of us intuitively know that and suspect it, but how it impacts you is you want to start thinking about that before you retire, because the first years that you're in retirement are your healthiest and most active years. And you don't want to unnecessarily sacrifice and not spend enough money in those first couple of years. So you want to kind of fade into it. And this might be heresy for a financial advisor, but maybe one way to prep for that is a year or two before you retire, maybe save less money. Maybe start spending more of that money. Maybe take a nicer vacation. Maybe take more vacation days. It's over 80% of us don't use all of our vacation days. So don't let that happen to you. And as you get close to retirement, it's great training to prepare for what it's going to feel like when you start spending money out of your retirement accounts. Okay, number 2, and this is one that you can start working on ahead of time too. It's really important that if you're married or if you have a partner, that you and your spouse or you and your partner are on the same page for what does retirement look like? What do you want to do? What are you both excited about doing? What does a great retirement look like for both of you? And here again, we can kind of test drive this before we retire, right? If retirement looks like a lot of travel in the first couple years, well, maybe a few years before you retire, you do some larger trips. You go to Southeast Asia, you go to Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Hong Kong, and you make sure that you actually enjoy that experience. And both spouses can see what it feels like to do that. And maybe one spouse says, you know what, I want to move closer to the grandkids. So, in today's world, when you can work remotely, maybe both of you, if you're both still working, can work remotely and live, rent a place near the grandkids a little bit early. So, but the point is, both spouses, both partners need to be on the same page. It's a lot smoother, and you don't need to wait until you retire to do that. So do that ahead of time. Okay, the number 3 is a financial plan is not a map. It's not a road map where to get from point A to point B, you take, the highway to street A to avenue C, etc. A financial plan is more like a compass. What you're going to find is your financial plan is hopefully going to be directionally correct, but there's so many unknowns, and so you have to be okay with change. You have to be okay with adjusting as things go, right? None of us know next year, is the stock market going to be up? Is it going to be down? And if that happens, how does that change things for you? And hopefully your financial plan has it where it doesn't change much for you as far as the cash flows off of your account. Hopefully you're using a sustainable withdrawal rate, something like the 4% rule. Again, that's just a rule of thumb. It'll get you in the ballpark. This is not financial advice. I don't know your situation. I unfortunately cannot give you financial advice. But a fee-only financial planner that's helped hundreds of clients do this can help you come up with a game plan, but realize that things are going to change, right? We don't know what next year's tax rate is going to be. Last year in December, they changed the rule for required minimum distributions. That used to happen in the year where you turned 70 and a half, and all that changed last December. We don't know tax rates. We don't know what interest rates are going to be. We don't know how the stock market's going to do. So think of your financial plan as a great compass, and think of your financial advisor as kind of like an adventure guide, a guide on your adventure for retirement. But don't think of it as a roadmap, because otherwise, when you get off plan, either doing better and hopefully this doesn't happen too often, but it will happen, where you will have years where you did worse. So think of it like a compass, and you'll be much better off for that. Okay, the next one is to think about the things that you want to do as kind of buckets of time. I suggest that, again, if you have a partner or spouse, that you and your partner and spouse put together, here's the things that I want to do in retirement. Here's the things that are important to me. And if you're not married, if you don't have a partner, sit down and, play some nice classical music. If you enjoy wine, have a glass of wine and think about what are the things that I want to do in retirement. And then I want you to go through the list and say, which of these things can I do in my 50s? Which of these things can I do in my 60s, in my 70s, and in my 80s? So for instance, on my list, I always wanted to learn to surf. Now, I learned to surf when I was 50, and I'm really glad that I did because I'm about to turn 60 here pretty soon. And it's a lot easier to learn to surf when you're 50 than when you're 60. I could still do it. But it would have been, it was and will have been for most people to learn to surf earlier. So that's just a silly example. But, if you want to go backpacking through Europe, that's probably something that, you're going to want to do in your 50s and your 60s when you still have health. If you enjoy golf, that's something that you can do in your 60s. If you enjoy fly fishing, I know people that are 70 that can fly fish, but put that list together and think about what are the things that I need to get done now, because they're going to be there. There's a window that I can do these things, and you don't want that window to pass and then say, oh, I never got to do that. A Disney cruise with the grandkids, you can probably do in your 70s, right? But, traveling fast through South America, maybe, seeing 10 countries in 2 months, that's a lot. It's physically tiring. Do that sooner rather than later. Living near the grandkids is probably something that you can do later in age as well, although that can be incredibly rewarding. So, but the point is, put together this bucket list, figure out what you can do at a certain age, and prioritize those when you're at that age. Okay, I'm going to throw bonus in here before we get to the number one. The number one is coming after this, but the bonus one is look at your assets, particularly your house, and say, is my house preventing me from doing some adventures that I would like to do? And if so, again, this is something you can prepare for years ahead of time. Sometimes lately, the real estate market's been pretty hot and it's been easier for people to sell their house. But it can take a while to sell your house. So if you're thinking, I don't want to own a house for the first 5 years of my retirement, that's something you can do before you retire and move into an apartment that lines up when you're going to retire, because then you'll be free. Okay, and the number one item on this list is your time, right? Your time in your life is precious and it's limited. So, you've heard me say it before. If you're 60 years old, you likely have less than 1,000 weeks of healthy active time. So when you retire, as you get ready to retire, be ready to hit the ground running and squeeze all the juice out of your retirement that you can. And speaking of that, this video here talks about four assets that you should think about having when you retire. Thanks for watching this video, and I hope you enjoy this one as well. Bye-bye.